Now then, you wrong'un. You're probably looking at the screen thinking, hang on, there's two of them. What's going on here? Well, welcome to Theatre of the Mind, Retro on his bikes for the very first time.
Hello.
Welcome, young sir. Welcome, welcome, welcome. The reason why I've invited Retro onto the channel is this ship crash in Baltimore. Obviously, you being a merchant seaman, Retro, you kind of know what's what with this particular ship. The updates today, investigators have boarded the ship and have recovered its data recorder. Is that the same as a black box on an aeroplane?
No, it'll be a voice recorder that's on the bridge. So they'll have all the conversations that have been over the radio and over the telephones to the engine room, and anything that's said on the bridge will be recorded.
Right. Well, just to give some background to the ship, it's 300 meters long. That's a fairly big old ship. Doesn't come across like that on the darkness when it initially hit the bridge. It's a fairly new ship. It was only built in 2015. Are modern ships that new, or do they use them for decades and decades and decades?
No. Well, when I was on the container ships a few years ago, they only lasted for 30 years. After 30 years, they got rid of them simply because nobody ever owned a container ship over 30 years.
Is there a particular reason for that?
Just that they just never owned it, and nobody had ever owned one. So it was the thing. After 30 years, they got rid of them.
They say there was an Indian crew, 22-person Indian crew on board, and it was sailing under the flag of Singapore. Is that unusual, or is that just kind of what they do at sea?
That's what they do at sea. They'll register a ship somewhere, and they'll take advantage of things like tonnage tax or some other tax.
I heard yesterday that there was possibly Lamborghinis and Bentleys and very expensive cars on the ship. Have you heard any different?
No, I haven't heard about that. But they can put anything in a container as long as it fits through the door. They'll fit anything.
Okay. I hear that there were two pilots on board the ship, a pilot and an apprentice pilot. What exactly is a pilot?
Well, a pilot is a guy that is skilled and has lots of knowledge about that particular port. So he'll know. The Americans tend to bring on their own satellite computer, and so they'll guide themselves with the program that they have. I've been into Baltimore before, and they have. When I was there, we went past the nuclear power station. So not only did the pilot come on, but the armed escort came with them.
Wow.
But yeah, a pilot on a ship, he doesn't take control of a ship. He just advises the master where to go.
To avoid the dangers like sandbanks and stuff, the correct course to take out of the port.
That's right. Yeah, the pilot will say to the captain, steer so and so angle, and the captain will say, yes, okay, I'll do that, and he'll get the helmsman to steer that particular course.
Okay. What do you think went wrong?
Well, two things. One, the engines could have just tripped off the switchboard. I've had this before. For no apparent reason, it just decides that it doesn't want the generator on the board anymore and just trips it off. Or it could have stopped. The generator engines could have just stopped because of bad fuel, and that would have caused the blackout as well.
Because from one of your videos today, you gave a great explanation. If anybody wants to go and see it on Retro's channel, there's two types of fuel that the ship would have used, isn't there?
Yeah. When I was on there, we had three types. We had diesel, and we also had this residual fuel, which is like crude oil, but after the refining process has taken everything out, like petrols, lube oils, and all that kind of stuff. Whatever's left is what we call a residual fuel, and that's what we burn on the big container ships. And of course, some of the more expensive fuels have got all the sulfur taken out. The Americans are a bit funny like that. They want all the sulfur taken out of the fuel so that there's nothing going in the atmosphere. And of course, today the fuel is getting better and better. But they may have had two types of fuel on board: one for in the American port, and one that they would use deep sea.
Is Baltimore a particularly difficult port to navigate?
Well, looking at, I've had a look on the charts today, and it's quite it's quite easy, really. It's not a lot of turns. You just trundle up the main channel and then turn under the bridge to get to the container terminal.
It looks like the ship's left port, gone to port, which is left, done a sort of U-turn, and then just gone straight out. And
it would have gone to a deep water basin, and then turned around there and then headed out down the main channel.
Right. So, what do you think caused the black smoke that we saw in the video?
Now, these engines, they're incredibly large, and they have obviously they're not very efficient at low RPMs and low powers. They need to be running at full power to get the turbochargers to work. Once the turbochargers are up to speed, they produce very little in the way of emissions. But at low speeds, your turbocharger isn't up to speed, so it's not producing enough air for the engine to use. So you're getting a lot of black unburnt smoke. So when the captain puts the engine on full ahead or astern, that will mean that it's putting a lot of fuel in, but it's not getting burnt until the turbochargers get up to speed. So that's why when you see a ship leaving port and the captain puts his foot down, you will get black smoke until it gets up to power.
According to the reportage that's coming out, the ship lost power the first time, because it lost power twice, but the first time it lost power and then made a distress call a few minutes before it hit the bridge.
Yeah. Well, when you have a blackout, you'll have all the engine room fans will go off. So if you've got any exhaust leaks, you may fill the engine room full of exhaust smoke, which will probably lead you to some kind of distress situation where you can't breathe because of all the exhaust smoke that's coming into the engine room.
I wanted to give a bit of background of yourself, because you're actually a ship's engineer, aren't you?
Yes.
That's your background.
Well, okay. I mean, it was 40 years ago that I started my career at sea at the age of 19. Wow. And well, it was a couple of years as a cadet, and then I joined P&O Containers. When I left P&O Containers, I ended up going out to the Costa Concordia, the wreck site. I was actually chief engineer on the accommodation barge there, and since then I've gone on to working on dredgers. I've worked on research vessels. That's where I am now at the moment. I'm on a research vessel based in southern England.
Some of the conspiracy theorists will say the ship was travelling too quick. How fast would it have been travelling coming out of port?
Well, you have to remember that these things have only got one rudder, and they need the water going over the rudder to steer the ship. And of course, they don't steer very well when they go into reverse.
Oh, was that what the captain did? Was it full astern?
I think, looking at the video, it looks like, obviously when you have a blackout, nothing works. The steering is hydraulic, so the steering would have stayed locked on its last position. So when they got power back, I think that the captain of that boat went into full astern, and the propeller acts like a paddle wheel. It actually drives you in the direction of rotation. So in this case, I think he went into astern. So of course that pushed the back end of the ship so that the front end was actually pointing towards the bridge rather than pointing away. I think what he should have done, I think he should have gone ahead, used the thrust from the propeller to drive the ship in the right direction. But as it was, he was going astern. The propeller acted like a paddle wheel and caused him to end up pointing.
Might ask that question again and edit this because it was jumping around and it just settled down a second. So do you think, Retro, that the captain has ordered full astern, knowing that he was going to hit the bridge?
Yeah, I think that rather than, I don't know his mindset, but what I think he should have done is I think he should have gone ahead and used the thrust from the propeller to turn the ship away from the bridge. But as it was, he took the option of going astern, thinking he'd be able to stop the ship. But in fact, what he did, while going astern, as you know, a ship's propeller will act like a paddle wheel, and it will drive that ship in the direction that it's rotating. So in this case, it caused the stern to go to port and the bow to go to starboard, and that's what led him to be pointing at the bridge, because he couldn't slow down. He didn't slow down enough. In that time that he went from blackout to astern, there just wasn't enough time for him to actually stop the ship. I think he did the wrong thing by going astern.
Have you ever been on a ship that's blacked out completely like that?
Yeah.
Have you?
Yes, halfway between Cape Town and Australia, we blacked out. And yeah, it was 45 minutes of no power until we got everything reset.
Wow. And all that happens is the ship just drifts wherever you are.
Yeah, it just drifts. Yeah, like I said, everything stops. We do have an emergency generator that will give us steering, lighting, power for air compressors, and the emergency fire pump, but not a lot. It won't actually allow the main engines to run, because you need, for the main engines to run, you need lube oil pumps, you need freshwater pumps, and you need seawater cooling.
From the video that we've all seen, there's a blackout, the lights come back on, at which point it appears they've got some kind of steering, and then it blacks out again. Would that have been the same reason?
Well, I'm beginning to think that it's fuel related. Now, if the engines suddenly stopped that gave them the first blackout, they would have then been able to restart the engines, but because maybe the filters were blocked, they had enough flow to keep the engines running, but at tick over. But when they wanted to do, go to full power, there probably wasn't enough fuel flow to provide full power on those generator engines.
We are talking literally seconds here. I mean, the whole incident from port to bridge is about 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes.
4 minutes, 12 seconds. Yeah. Yeah.
So
they did quite well. They did quite well to get the engine, the lights back on within a minute. It was 59 seconds. I worked it out. They managed to get the lights back on.
Who would have been in charge of the ship? Would it have been the pilot, or would it have been the captain?
It would have been the captain. The pilot doesn't take control of a ship. He just tells the captain where to steer, what direction to go in. But the captain is ultimately responsible for that ship.
It looks like the ship was in good condition because it had been inspected in 2 foreign ports, June and September last year. And during the June inspection in Chile, there was a faulty fuel pressure gauge detected and fixed. There was an inspection done in New York in September, and they found nothing. So the ship was in good order, seemingly.
Yeah. Most of these ship systems, they have a local pressure gauge and they'll have a remote pressure gauge. So there probably wasn't an issue there with the pressure itself. It was probably just a reading, maybe in the control room the pressure gauge didn't work, or maybe locally it didn't work. But they would have had a decent reading somewhere. But I understand they went to New York as well and had a big inspection there.
Yeah.
Now I've been to New York, and they're pretty strict.
So if it's passed with flying colours, nothing detected, no deficiencies at all.
Good. Yeah.
So the exact cause is still unknown, Retro, but you've got 40 years experience. What would you say, in your experience, was the cause of this?
Well, I'm beginning to think that it was something to do with either dirty fuel and blocked filters, or water in the fuel, something along those lines. But to get the engines to go and then suddenly stop again, I think it was a clogged filter, and maybe they changed the filter over. You have these built-in redundancies. You see, you'll have one filter that's dirty, that's offline, clean, ready to go, and then the one that's online may have got dirty. So if they changed over quickly, they would have had the engines going, but of course, maybe more dirt went into that second filter and choked it again.
If that has happened, what do you think the captain's options were? And they were in a very dynamic situation where they had to think quickly.
I think that they were very unfortunate that this happened in the location that they did. And, you know, there's a cascade of failures here. Is that, you know, something went wrong with the engines. Captain went astern when he should have gone ahead. I mean, if even just for those few seconds, he could have corrected the course of the ship, because the ship weighs 100,000 tons, and you're not going to stop it within that short distance.
What do you think? What speed was the ship traveling at?
According to one of the websites I was looking at, it was traveling at about 8.7 knots. And when it crashed, it was traveling at 7.6 knots. So that qualifies my thought that the engines were going astern, because it actually shed, in that short distance, it actually shed 1 knot of speed.
Wow, is that fast for that particular body of water?
Probably not, because you need to get the speed, through the water to make the rudder work. Otherwise, there's not enough water over the rudder to get it to steer the ship properly.
So, in your 40-year experience, what do you think has actually happened here? Has it been just a tragic accident?
Yeah, I think it's just been a series of unfortunate events, really. What they call a cascade of events that's happened. I think that either the generators just tripped off the board on their own, or they stopped, which could be the fuel. Now, on a ship, you'll have built-in redundancies. You'll have an online filter, which is possibly dirty, and you'll have a clean offline filter ready to change over. And I think probably that they may have had dirty fuel that blocked one filter, and then as they changed it over, that filter then got blocked, and that's what caused the second blackout, was the fact that they had dirty fuel.
So who will investigate all of this? Who will get to the answers?
Well, there's an organisation called the Marine Accident Investigation Bureau, and they will investigate this.
And what do they do? Do they go and look at the ship? Do they look at the circumstances? Is it like the black box investigation for an airplane?
Yes, they'll go in and they'll use a process of, they'll look at absolutely everything. They'll check through the logbooks. They'll start asking questions of the staff, and they'll go back and they'll come up with a plausible explanation of what actually happened.
And how do they do that? Do you know how long it would take?
Oh, it can take absolutely months and months. They may even go as far as checking the registration numbers of all the components in the engine, just to make sure that they were genuine parts. It could take absolute months.
Could take years. Thank you, Retro, because obviously we don't have the kind of experience or insight that you have. I know that the investigators are saying they're calling off the search and rescue. There's still 6 people missing. They're calling off the search and rescue because they don't believe they're going to find any, and the bodies will reappear at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe they were construction workers on the bridge, not I thought it was drivers and passengers of the vehicles, but I didn't realise that they were actually having work done on the bridge itself.
I think they were filling potholes in.
Yeah, probably.
And thankfully, there was no traffic on the bridge at the point of collapse.
I know when you look at the footage before the accident, you see it may have had traffic light control. I don't know, but you definitely see a few vehicles travelling along the bridge, literally minutes before the collision.
Retro, it's been fabulous having you on the channel for the first time. Thank you for all the insight.
Nice to be here.
Oh, brilliant, wonderful. Best of luck, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Bye bye.